Good morning, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joes. I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, and Purple Territory Radio. Here with, as always, Mr. Joe Oberly.
Morning, folks. Hope you're staying warm.
Yes, sir. Joe is the editor for PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com. He also writes for the Sports Post. And depending who you talk to, this person may be on the show every week, which I'll explain in a second, or this may be his second appearance on the show. Mr. Chris Kluwe, former punter for the Vikings, author, tabletop gaming magnate, all of it. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. I think you're the first person that's actually come back, so either that says something about you or it says something about us.
You went to $50 for that.
Yeah. The inside joke that I'll explain this to you, Chris, a little bit, because I don't think I told you when we were emailing each other, but I've been in a 3-month-long debate with one guy on Reddit about punting in general, special teams in general, as it pertains to prefer coaching, who's responsible for what, how you can scout certain things, and because you were on the show 2.5 years ago, he's convinced that we're like best friends and that I'm just stumping for you somehow. So
well, yeah, we talk on a daily basis, right?
Well, that goes without saying. In my dreams, but I figured I'd prove him right by having you back on the show. I can't wait to see his reaction. But yeah, last time you were on the show, I think you were either had just launched or were in the process of launching Twilight of the Gods. And wanted to see how that went, what you're up to now, all that sort of stuff before we get into the nitty-gritty of football. Ugh.
Yeah, go on. How did the game do?
Sure, game's doing great. We have a small but passionate fan base. We successfully kickstarted our both the core set and then our first 3 mini expansions. And right now we're working on our first big expansion, which will add a bunch of new stuff to the game. So our artist is doing work on that right now, and we're getting the cards laid out, and we're hopeful that that'll go up sometime in the next couple months or so. But it seems the people that have tried it really like it. It looks like our target audience is the disaffected Magic the Gathering player.
Okay.
Who's tired of spending $1,000 every 3 months to stay current standard. So yeah, it's we don't want to replace Magic for you, but if you feel like you're getting kind of disaffected by it, maybe come check out Twilight of the Gods, because we have a lot of complex and interesting stuff going on, and you don't have to buy a whole lot of stuff in order to play the game.
Chris, I gotta explain right out of the gate that I am not probably a member of your target audience with this game, but
no worries.
I just don't know about. I love board games. I grew up playing board games, and I played one recently. My kids got me one for my birthday, which was Catan, which is not this kind of thing, but it was a blast, and I really liked it. But can you tell me, in this parlance, I'm uninitiated, what sets your game apart from the others that are out there in the same genre?
Yeah, so basically a lot, I would say actually almost all of the kind of dueling deck-based card games. So like each person has a deck of cards, each card has special abilities on it, and you're using that to try to defeat your opponent. Pretty much every one of those is fairly dependent on the random number generator, or luck. So what we like to call RNG. And a lot of times who wins or loses isn't necessarily determined by player skill. It's, did I draw my right combo of cards before my opponent drew theirs? So you're not really even playing against your opponent. You're playing against the odds in your own deck. And to me, that was one of the things that kind of turned me off Magic after a long time playing it, because it would be like, okay, I've built my deck, I have these cards, I know what to do, I just didn't draw the cards. It's like I could have been playing against an AI, and it would have made no difference.
Okay.
Because there was really no player interaction going on. And so one of the big things in our game is that there's always constant player interaction. You're going to have to beat the other person. Like there is no 3 card specific combo that will win you the game.
Interesting.
It's a battle between you and the other person.
I like that. The way you describe it's almost like not getting the ball in overtime in a playoff game. You know, you never get.
Yeah, I know. Like exactly like that.
It's that sounds interesting because sometimes it's the roll of the dice or the
quite literally
the cards you pulled that determine the winner, and it shouldn't be that way because then why you play? Am I lucky today? I mean, if it's strategy should dictate. It sounds like that's what your game does, huh?
Yeah, it's much more about the strategy than about the randomness. Now, there is some randomness in it. You know, obviously, you still draw cards, and you may not get the exact cards that you're looking for. But the thing is that it's what cards you have that you can use. Like every card in the deck is useful. You'll never find something that's not useful. It's just up to you to determine, okay, which is the most useful for the situation I find myself in. So yeah, it's definitely much more strategy based over RNG based. And I mean, like that's what you see in a lot of sports too, where it's like, okay, everyone knows what's going on, everyone knows the rules, everyone knows what they're supposed to do, but maybe a player trips on an out route, right? Like that's where randomness comes into play. Mm-hmm. You just can't predict something like that. But for the most part, the player knows his responsibility, he knows his assignment. If he doesn't trip, if he doesn't, step on that wet patch of grass, then he'll be in position to make the play. So his strategy was good, but he got kind of screwed over by RNG. It wasn't like all of a sudden on this play you can only take the field with 8 players and your opponent has 12 players.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
like I used to play probably 20 years ago the X-Men card game that was out, and with your game or games in general, I know with like there's a fantasy shop in my neighborhood where it's always packed. They're always having tournaments, and I go in there with my nieces, and they have that big open bin of cards you can look through, and I'm always hoping I'll find like one of those $1 million or super rare cards. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure like how that how that works in regards to the strategy. Like if someone has some card that no one else has, if that helps them, and then with your game, if the stuff is more evenly distributed, or if you guys have some like 1 in a million type cards that people might not always be able to find.
Right. Yes. So essentially, there's 2 kind of ways to go about making a card game. The first way is a majority of games use the model that Magic uses, Pokemon uses, Yu-Gi-Oh uses, and it's called the collectible card game format. And what they mean by collectible card game is that every time you buy a booster pack or a box of cards, you don't know what you're getting inside it. So It's always random what cards you're getting. Therefore, they can make super overpowered cards and really high-priced cards that are very rare. They only appear once every 200 packs or something like that. So that's the model where you end up having to spend a lot of money because you don't know what you get. It's like pulling a lever on a slot machine, right?
Pokemon.
Yeah. But the other type of model is what's called a living card game. Now, unfortunately, only Fantasy Flight can call their living card games because they went and trademarked the term. So we're not technically a living card game. We are an expandable card game, but the model is exactly the same. And what a living card game is you know exactly what card you're getting every time you buy a box or a pack. So with a living card game, the people who make it will never make as much money as a collectible card game because just people aren't incentivized to buy that many packs. However, the people playing the game don't have to spend as much money because they know, okay, I can buy these packs, I'll know what cards I'm getting, and I want those cards for my deck, I can get those cards.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, looking at or playing that game, I described Catan, which I don't know if you guys even know about it, but I'm sitting there thinking, these things are so popular, games are so popular these days, and you're an author, Chris. I sat there and I thought, I'm a creative guy, I can sit down and get involved in creating one of these games. That's my first thing I need you to blow holes into, that it's not as easy as and the other question I wanted to ask you is, how much fun was it to create it as someone who's a creative person yourself?
Yeah, so as far as the creative process, it took me probably about 5 years to make Twilight of the Gods. And yeah, and that was working with both my brother and then another friend of ours. And so the thing is that when you make a game, generally you'll start with a core concept or idea. Okay, I think this sounds fun. I'm going to make a game around this. Let's do this. Now you actually have to figure out, okay, how do I explain that to the players, and how do I make sure that the players actually are having fun? A big part of the early iterative process is let's see what happens when we have these rules, and then go play the game, see if it's fun. If it's not fun, you need to change something. And we went through a lot of that because, with complex games, especially card games, you have to figure out how players can have interesting experiences without making that one deck or one combination of cards that really overpowers everything. Mm-hmm. Because if you have only one optimum combo, then that's what everyone's going to use because it's the best one to use. So you have to make cards that are different, cards that are interesting, but you don't want to make cards that are good or bad because in that case, no one's ever going to use the bad cards. They're only going to use the good cards, and you're limiting player choice. You want to make cards that are different. And so, if you want to make a game, look at your mechanics, look at what you're asking the player to do, and at first ask, is this fun? Will someone have fun playing this? That's the most important question. Not, is this intricate or complex or baroque? It's, is this fun? That's the game.
What is the key to that? I mean, is this fun? What do you think it is that makes it fun, that it makes a good game, I guess? Is there some...
I think part of it is just knowing what audience you're going for and knowing what they like to do. So, for example, Twilight of the Gods is aimed at people who play card games, who like complex interactions between cards, similar to what you would find in Magic the Gathering and other card games like that. Whereas someone who prefers Catan or Monopoly or Risk, they might not be looking for the same experience. They might be looking more for a piece-based tactical strategy type thing, a meeple type game. So for them, something fun might be, how can I collect territory on this board by moving my people versus the other people around me, instead of how can I get these cards to do the things that I want them to do by playing them in certain combinations. So, yeah, a big part of it is knowing what experience you want the player to have, and then are you creating that experience in a way that they're going to want to play it? Because most people will try a game once, but they got to come back and play it again.
I heard that was the kind of the knock against that Ghostbusters game that went gangbusters on Kickstarter. I actually put some money into that, and then I never ended up playing it, but I heard it was relatively monotonous, and it was a lot of the same thing over and over again, just catching random ghosts and putting and storing them and so on and so forth. So it sounds so complicated. I got a nosebleed just listening to you talk about it.
Yeah, and that's the thing with a lot of games, is that there will be that initial learning curve. Pretty much any board game enthusiast will tell you that every game looks interesting right up until the point you have to sit down and read the rules. They're always different. They're always specific to the game. And there's always those edge cases where it's what happens if we do this? And then you check the rule book and it doesn't tell you. You're well, we got to try to figure this out. But, that is an important thing with game design as well, is making sure you have replayability.
Yeah.
So that way, if a player wants to play your game again, they're not having the exact same experience. There's potential for them to have different experiences each time they play your game.
That does sound right. I mean, because we learned, my kid taught me this game, and we started playing it, and there was a little bit reminiscence of Monopoly, so I was able to understand things going into it, but it's completely different. And then you mix up the board, and it's a new game every time, which makes me want to play again. I want to do a random setup and see where you end up. So
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why Catan has been so enduring. Like, I mean, that game's been around for a while, and it's been really popular for a while. Yeah, it's one of the most well-known board games, I think, in the history of board games, aside from, like, Monopoly and some of the other Hasbro ones. But, yeah, one of the big, advantages of Catan is that you do get that new experience each time, and you're also playing against the other players.
Right.
It's a lot more dependent on your skill as a player versus, did I get these specific tiles? I know I'm going to win the game.
Yeah, exactly. That is the right. All of a sudden, you're trying to build your thing, and all of a sudden, it's not. There's some competition going on. I got to watch what that other person's doing and make some strategy here. So that made it really interesting to me, and I won too, so that helped.
That's probably that's the only reason he's talking about it. We would have never heard anything.
I
won. So do you think you'll be doing a Kickstarter for the big expansion, or are you guys doing that in-house?
Yeah, so we'll be doing a Kickstarter for that. We still don't know the timing on that yet because that's up to our publisher. It's not up to us. But, yeah, I will for sure tell people about it on Twitter because I am very excited about my game. I still enjoy playing my game even after developing it for 5 years. So it's something that, like, I always tell people, they're like, oh, this is great. Like, I really like this. And I'm like, good, go tell your friends. It's the best thing you can do for us.
Yeah,
go
man.
Get them interested in the game, too.
That's what we're trying to do here, get the word out. It looks like an interesting game. I like I said, I don't have a lot of familiar with those kind of games. But
the artwork is awesome.
It is. It really does look cool.
Yeah, no, our artist does an amazing job. It's only one guy, too.
That's not. I was going to ask you that.
It blows my mind. Yeah,
wow.
Like he does everything, and he's so quick with it. I'm just like, man, you should be having a job somewhere that pays you more. You're pretty talented, but please don't leave. Keep doing it.
So last time you were on the show, we talked about your experience during the 2009 NFC Championship game, and kind of what the vibe was on the sidelines, of how players felt about the late hits, and. Yeah, obviously, with the games last weekend, there was some questionable calls in both of the games. But there's I don't think I've ever seen a call for a rematch on a level that I saw after the Saints-Rams game. I wrote an article on Tuesday that was basically like, now Saints fans understand 2009. Because I did put together a GIF for GIF late hit, whether it was a penalty or not, article about a year and a half ago, and it got picked up more so in Saints media, and a lot of the people, I used basically all their refrains against me back against them, and said, it's hypocritical to do so, but that's why you shouldn't have done it in the first place. And as a player from that era on that team, I wanted your take. I'm sure you're not as petty as I am, but very few people are.
I'm much pettier.
Well, that's why we're best friends. Yeah. So, like, what your take was on that in general, and as someone who may or may not feel like you were robbed of a Super Bowl opportunity, just maybe the larger game too.
Yeah, no. So I think that it was definitely a foul that should have been called, and I can kind of see why the ref missed it because when I first saw it on TV, like the live action broadcast, it looked like the DB was getting there at the same time the ball was getting there. So I was like, oh, okay, you made a good play on the ball. And then you watch the replay and you're like, oh my god, he just flat out murdered someone on the field. But the thing is that having been in that situation on the opposing side against that exact same team, I immediately started laughing because it was the best thing ever. like just watching all the Saints people lose their minds, and especially watching Sean Payton lose his mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, you guy. You want to start talking about the competitive integrity of the game? Let's talk about the competitive integrity of the game. Like, yeah, no, it was a delicious piece of Schadenfreude.
You sound like plenty of Vikings fans who felt the same way. I kind of watched it unfolding, and I'm not going to say I wished it on the Saints, but I'm going to say I sat here and I didn't mind one bit. I am kind of amazed at how much hue and cry there has been to, replay the game. We had Watson yesterday out telling Commissioner Goodell that he has the power to do something here, and
Michael Thomas did too.
Yeah, is there no sense of self-awareness? I mean, are you especially for the fans that certainly have been around since 2009? This is exactly. I mean, the Vikings fans. We did it. They put out this tale of the tape kind of deal where it showed all those plays in overtime that went the opposite way, and they showed all the things that that the refs got wrong in your game, Chris. And we all said, yeah, that's exactly what we felt, and we went on with our lives. But this seems to be taking on something bigger than that, and that the fact that they want to bring the teams back and replay the game, it's just so silly. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely ridiculous, like how badly they're taking it. And I mean, again, that gives me so much joy.
Yeah.
you look back at our situation, and yeah, we were upset, but it's like, okay, that's football. Sometimes you just get screwed.
Yeah.
I've been in other games where you just get screwed. Like, for whatever reason, the ref is just not calling anything that goes your way. The ball doesn't bounce your way. Wasn't your day to win. You get over it. You go play the next game. Like, yeah, sure, you might have to wait till the next season to play the next game, but like you can't go back in time. You can't change that. And that all these Saints fans and even the players are like, oh, we need to change this outcome. It's like, you had 59 minutes and 48 seconds of other plays you could have done.
That's right.
There were plenty of other opportunities. I mean, that is the one thing that I will say about our game, and I think I said it on the previous one, is that, yeah, we got screwed by the refs, but we also turned the ball over, 5 times throughout the course of that game? Like, we had plenty of chances to put that thing out of reach. So, I mean, yeah, it sucks that we lost the way we did, but we shouldn't have let it get that close in the first place. I mean, for the Saints, it's the same thing. Like, if you don't want to worry about getting screwed by the refs, don't make it a close game. Beat the other team by a couple touchdowns.
How many times did you even punt in that game? Just between the yardage and the turnovers.
Yeah, I think I only punted 4 times, maybe 5. They were all in the first half. I didn't punt at all in the second half. So it was a weird game because we outgained them like by some ridiculous margin of yards.
It was like 425 to like 100 something, or maybe 225.
Yeah, kept turning it over in the red zone.
Yeah, it's amazing. You hit the key thing right there. I mean, for everybody that wants to say that they got screwed by one play, you had your opportunity to win the game, and 5 turnovers. I mean, that's what every Viking fan and I'm sure Viking player had to look at. This is what we did. This is why we lost the game. It ended here on this play, but still. Anyway, let me ask you about the second game. A different, they had an inordinate amount of points in the fourth quarter in that game. And maybe I'm asking the obvious here, but sometimes I think in our business with Joe and I, when we're talking about these games and we'd think about analytics, and we'd try to bring all these things in and make sure these players are considered robots rather than humans. Isn't fatigue just a huge, huge deal in something like that in the fourth quarter? Isn't it? It seems obvious, but I mean, if you're holding a team all game long, and then in the fourth quarter the lead goes back and forth, and how big of a deal is fatigue in these players in that time?
Oh, no, it's a huge deal, and especially more so for the defense than for the offense, because the offense generally knows what they're doing. The defense has to react to what the offense is doing. So if you lose even half a step on defense, or you fail to keep getting penetration, then it gives the offense so much more time to execute their plays. And that is actually, I think, one of the problems with the current overtime rules that not a lot of people are looking at, is that, as we saw in the Patriots versus the Chiefs, like, the Patriots just flat out marched down the field because the Chiefs defense was too tired to stop them. I don't think that you can expect people to play the entirety of a 3-hour football game at a very, very high competitive level and still be as fresh at the end of the game as they were at the beginning of the game. And that's why the overtime rules don't make sense, because you're assuming that, okay, yeah, each team's going to have an chance, but it really isn't that way, because the offense is progressively gaining more and more of an advantage over the defense as the game goes on. And that's why, like, I tweeted out, I would really like to see the overtime rules changed to college, or just something where each team gets a chance. Like, you got to give each team a chance to score. And, like, the way it is now, it's just, okay, if both teams have really good offenses and both teams have, good defenses, well, at the end of the game, the offense is going to have that advantage because they know what they're doing and the defense doesn't. Now the defense has lost that half step.
So you can have the best game plan in the world and you can't coach against fatigue in that situation. Is there anything that you guys do to prepare for that? You almost know it's coming every game. I mean, especially an overtime game. Your teams are going. Does that make a rotation of all your defenders really important, and to have depth so you can do that? And is that because there's nothing you can really do?
And is it I think too, like, isn't muscle memory really important? Like practicing tired so you know how your body reacts in that situation.
Yeah, well, I mean, you condition as best you can, and like you'll see it in soccer games too, where once you start getting into like the 85th, 86th, 87th minute, like these are guys who've been sprinting their butts off the entire game, and like they'll just start slowing down. Like you'll have defenders who, because they're forced to cover more ground than the forwards, because the forwards get to choose when they make their runs, whereas the defenders constantly have to be switching to other areas. Like they just slow down and they can get outrun. Same in football. Like you have a football play is a very intense physical event. Like it doesn't last very long. Most plays only last like 6 or 7 seconds. But you're exerting 100% of your body's effort during those 6 or 7 seconds, and it's it's an anaerobic exercise. It's not an aerobic exercise. So you can only train for that so much before the lactic acid builds up in your muscles, and they just stop working. Like that's why you guys go down with cramps in the fourth quarter. I mean, they could have been hydrating as much as possible. They could be in as good a shape as possible, but once that lactic acid starts building up, your muscles are just going to stop working, and there's not really anything you can do about it.
So I have a question that might seem stupid, but this is actually the crux of that filibuster debate that I've been having. And I haven't been a big fan of prefers just based on the turnover, and I feel like it's different every time, but it's a mixture of just hubris and negligence, maybe. There was a quote that may or may not have been taken out of context, and it wasn't the crux of my entire argument, but he was talking about some of the missed field goals and the fact that they were it was the holder's fault, and he said that apparently he's never learned how to hold. And
he wasn't. Yeah.
And so I said, isn't that something that you think you would ask or find out before he got here? And the same guy that thinks that you and I have bunk beds, basically said that that's an impossible thing to know, that you can't scout or ask a guy who's was on 3 or 4 different teams in the NFL before he got here. And it opened up this larger question about both scouting and responsibility, in that how much of that can you find out beforehand, whether it's a veteran guy or a guy coming out of college, and then also where to assign, it is the NFL, fair or unfair, there's blame, everywhere. Does that go down to, with the Vikings as a case study, since you have been gone, it's pretty much every season and a half, it seems like the Vikings have a new guy for different reasons, both for punters and field goal kickers, and it seems like the return on the investment is getting worse and worse each time. Bailey did have a decent season, though. And so, yeah, it's a huge open-ended question with like 50 different ways to take it. But I wanted your take on like the scouting process, whether they can ask you, hey, you ever hold or watch watched. I said, or just an eye test, and the guy said that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. There's no eye test. I'm like, well, we'll just watch film. So
Chris,
yeah,
what do you
think?
Yeah, no, I think you absolutely can determine whether someone can hold or not, because one of the very first things you do before even signing someone is you're going to watch their college game film. And on that college game film, if they're a punter, then it will show if they've held for field goal kicks or not. It's really not that hard to figure out. And then if you're thinking about bringing a guy in, generally you're going to do a workout. If it's just some person off the street, during that workout, you will say, okay, now let's see if you can hold. I've done that during workouts, where it's been you're trying out for the team, you have to show what you can and can't do. I think Prefer might have been saying that in jest, where kind of like a sarcastically, apparently he didn't know how to, which I can see that being taken the wrong way. But yeah, there's absolutely no way that he should have been on the field if the special teams coach didn't know whether or not he could hold. That just shouldn't happen. Now, the question that really comes up is he being taught to hold the right way? Because holding, when people think about holding, they think, oh, you just catch the ball and put it down. But what holding is you don't just catch the ball and put it down. You have to put the ball down on a very precise spot so that the kicker can hit it the way he's used to. It also has to be learning, leaning a certain way, and then you also have to adjust for any sort of bad snap. So it's definitely not as hard as being a receiver and running routes, but you do need to have some athletic ability at catching the ball and handling with your hands, which some guys just don't have. There are some people who just can't catch the ball. So in order to be a good holder, you have to be able to adjust to all that and make sure that your kicker is getting the best look possible.
Well, that makes sense if he was being facetious or
yeah,
whatever.
I took it that way too.
I apologize because I did not research and see his expression or whatever when he said it or what he said. So if that's the case, that makes a little more sense, because this sounded out of left field, and why would he say that if that's exactly?
But it's to me it was still an admission that he wasn't a good holder, and then the question was, why'd you bring him in then? Either way, you know what I mean? Regardless of when they discovered it.
Right, yeah, the underlying issue there is that if he isn't good enough to be holding, that is on you as a coach to identify that and find the proper person to put in there.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the problem arises, is that it's not so much, okay, does he actually know the mechanics of holding? It's, was he able to do the job properly? If not, you need to find someone who can. Because getting points in a football game is pretty important.
Definitely.
So how much, I kind of wanted to ask you this question. As reporters, when we're there, we see the kicking, the special teams go through a quick run of their drills in front of the media, and then the media runs away. And do you guys then just go off to your field and just keep kicking and going over stuff? And do you work with coordinators? Do you work with the like Mike Prefer? Do you work with him specifically? How does that all work? Are there assistants that do that? I'm just curious about the process.
Yeah, so generally what happens is that we'll actually go out probably 30, 45 minutes before practice just to get warmed up, so that way we're ready to go once special teams is up and running, because you don't want to kick the ball without having been warmed up. That's a really good way to tear some muscles. It takes a little while to warm up. But so during the drills themselves, we're trying to work on our form. We're trying to make sure that we execute properly. And then once those are over and all the press heads out and moves into the regular practice, the specialists will generally move to one of the unused fields, because usually the team will rotate. They'll have position stuff going on, then they'll go into offense, defense, and they'll go into 7-on-7, stuff like that. But generally there's a half of a field or an entire field open to be used. And so if there's anything that we need to work on, we'll go there and work on that for usually about 30 to 45 minutes. And then pretty much at that point, we're done for practice, because you don't want to kick too much. You don't want to snap too much, because you can, overexert yourself. And then you're not ready for the game.
That's
what I've kicked my leg out before. I've seen other guys kick their legs out before. So
that's amazing. Yeah, I asked Prefer about that once. How come they use the kicking machine so often? It's here's that time to get reps, and he told me exactly that. That makes sense. Well, so then who does? I mean, when you're working on stuff, are you working on technique? Are you working on? I mean, because basically, specifically a kicker, maybe more so than a punter. I mean, there's a number of different kind of punts you can do, so I can see where you can, work on different things. But a kicker's basically working on distance and maybe wind conditions. It's basically the same thing over and over, isn't it?
Yeah, and that actually is what a kicker wants to work on the most, is their consistency. Like, you want to make sure you're doing the exact same motion time after time after time, and part of that is getting the snap and hold into the process, because there's a big difference between kicking off a motionless ball that's being held by either someone or a mechanical holder, and actually getting your timing right, so you're kicking the ball within the 1.25 to 1.3 seconds you need to get it off in, while still performing at a high level. Like, it is a big difference. So you want to get as many holds off as many kicks off an actual snap and hold as you can, while also still not over kicking yourself. So that's one of the big things we would do too, is that when Longwell was there, we would actually do generally about like 25, 30 field goals before practice even started, like just to make sure that our operation was good. And that would be around like 12, 30 or so. So we just go into the field house and hit kind of like zigzag up one hash and then back down the other. And it's just to make sure, okay, are all the cylinders firing in rhythm? Is everything good? And we do that at least twice a week.
So one more here, Joe, real quick. And so where do you put the blame on missed kicks then in a game? I mean, is it because the only X factor then in those games is pressure? I mean, you've got the other team coming in, and they might have a different scheme. They might be jumping over the line, which we're not supposed to do. But ultimately you can't. The coaches prepare you, and then the kicker's got to go out there and make the kicks. And so, isn't it on them, or is it on the pressure that the coaches might put on them? What do you think?
Quick caveat to that too. Just in the question in general, but then when you look at, like, again, the Vikings having multiple kickers over multiple years and having the same thing, does that change it at all?
Yeah, so when you look at kind of what's happening with the Vikings, and then just kind of kicking in general, is that the miss is always on, assuming that the operation is executed properly, the ball's there for the kicker to kick, and that no one's blocking it. The miss is always on the kicker, because he's the one who's in control. He's the one who actually kicks the ball. That being said, if the kicker is prepared properly or not can have a lot to do with how the coaches treat the kicker and his mental state going into the kick. And I will say, in my entire time in the NFL, and in college and in high school, I never had a special teams coach that actually could successfully explain to me the fundamental mechanics of either kicking or punting. And that is not uncommon. There are very, very few special teams coaches who actually understand the mechanics of kicking or punting a football, and which is crazy to think about, right? Like if you had a quarterback coach who had no idea how to throw the football, you'd be like, why is this guy our quarterback coach?
Yeah.
He should have no job here. But when it comes to special teams, knowing how to kick and punt is not a requirement to be a special teams coach. You have to know how to plan up schemes and coverages, but you don't have to know how to kick or punt.
I was going to say,
so they're not teaching you. You're coming in with, you got to have the knowledge coming in, or else you're probably not even going to get the opportunity, I guess.
You can, can Google it.
Look, you can watch some YouTube videos. But, no, if you want to be a successful NFL kicker or punter, then you absolutely have to know how to coach yourself, because there isn't anyone who will fix it for you that's on the field with you. And that's why you see a lot of times, like when a guy's struggling, they'll bring in an outside kicking consultant, right? Because that's the guy who actually knows how to kick or punt.
So you could make a lot of money doing that, man.
Yeah, no, it is something that, like, it's a very specialized niche, but it's one that keeps cropping up more often than not. I think unless you're like a Dave Tobe guy or a Bruce DeHaven, like they're kind of like special team lifers who've really made a mastery of studying every phase of the game. You're not going to have a coach that's going to be able to say, well, on this kick, your second step was a bit long. You need to shorten it up to make sure that you're striking the ball at the right point so that your follow-through is going directly at the uprights instead of shifting off to the left because you swept through.
So what determines a good or
that's not
bad?
something you're going to hear.
What determines a good or bad special teams coordinator? Then how do you decide? Are they just like good directors of people, and then they're aspiring to be a defensive coordinator or offense, or what?
Yeah, look, so the way the coaching ladder works is that generally you'll start as an assistant to a coach. So generally you'll start as the assistant to the head coach. So you're basically a glorified secretary. You run around, you help make the play sheet. That's what Stefanski started as. He was, basically you run around and just do everything the coach needs. You're a gopher. Then from there, you move to an assistant to a position coach. So now you're kind of learning what that position does, what the meetings go like, how things are going. Then you might move to an actual either position coaching for one of the, I won't call them less important positions, but they're not quite as heavily involved in schemes. Mm-hmm. So like tight ends, running backs, wide receivers, DBs, corners, safeties, like those are all kind of ones where the players kind of know what to do in terms of their technique. And it's like it's fairly easy to teach them their technique. Like just get down in your back pedals. Make sure you're braking on the third step. From there, you'll go to a special teams coordinator. You'll go to a special teams assistant job. So that way now you're getting more of an overview of the team itself. Then you'll go to a special teams coach, which is generally also your special teams coordinator, because you don't have room to have multiple people do that. From there, you'll go to a better position coach job, which is usually either a QB coach or a line coach, either offensive or defensive. From there, you'll go to either offensive or defensive coordinator, and then if you've been doing well, then you'll go to head coach. So there's kind of this ladder that you climb, and a lot of guys who are in the special teams coach part of their ladder, like they're interested in doing it well, so they can keep moving up the ladder. But knowing how to kick and punt hasn't been a requirement in order to keep moving up that ladder.
That's amazing.
You need to drop some schemes and make sure your coverage is good.
That blows my mind.
Was Prefer a good coordinator?
Yeah, no, his schemes and coverage were generally pretty good. He did a pretty good job of breaking down the other teams and identifying, okay, here's where we need to focus on in order to address the specific things that this team does. I will say the technique he taught for guys running down in coverage was really good. It did a very good job of teaching them how not to block people in the back on returns, which is one of my biggest pet peeves. You see it happen so often, and it's such a killer penalty because it just negates anything you've done on the return.
Right.
But yeah, he was good at that. But yeah, when it came to the actual kicking and punting mechanics, it was we'd put on film. He'd be like, "So what'd you do wrong there?" And I'd be like, "All right, let me explain to you what I did wrong there." Now I'm gonna fix it.
God, that blows my mind. I guess one of the questions I had was, were you surprised that he left? I felt that his time should have been up here anyway, personally, but they kept him on from Frazier's staff, despite some of the stuff that happened between you two. And I guess I was a little surprised that he left, just because I felt like maybe there was some loyalty there, or assumed loyalty. I'm sure it doesn't always work that way in life or in football or anything. But were you surprised that he went to Cleveland?
Not really, and honestly, I was expecting him to leave earlier because from the sense that I got, he seemed to me as someone who was eventually pushing to one day be a head coach. And he was kind of trying to work into that position. Yeah. And the thing is, with everything that happened at the Vikings, there's no way you're ever going to be a head coach there.
Outside of an interim one.
Coach. Right. Yeah. They'll let you wear the headset, but I mean they're not going to make you a head coach. And so I think for him, he's looking at it as, okay, maybe I can get a fresh start over here. And it's. For me personally, I hope that he has learned how to treat people better and not have the same circumstances arise that kind of came up between us. Yeah. If that's the case, then by all means, go teach people, go lead them. But the thing is if you're going to be a head coach, you have to be focused on, or actually if you're going to be any sort of coach, you have to be focused on getting the best out of your players that they can possibly do. And that means knowing what makes them play better and knowing what makes them play worse. And if you're doing things that make your players play worse, then you're not being a good coach. Like,
Yeah.
that's the whole point of coaching, is to make the players better.
Definitely, and that was actually one of Joe's questions too. Was does Zimmer perhaps in an unintentional way add more pressure to the kicking position just based on his the lack of patience that he has, and with that, how did you feel about the Daniel Carlson situation as a guy who now he plays for Oakland? You ended up in Oakland too. Did you feel bad for him?
Yeah, no, I think that's something where Zimmer is definitely hurting the team by having that attitude, because as a punter or kicker, like, or as any position player, like, if your head coach says, or makes it clear that he doesn't really care about you or your position, like, you're not real motivated to go out there and do, it's like, well, F that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, and yeah, you want to make your kicks, you want to do well because you want to keep getting paid, but at the same time, if the coach doesn't have your back, like, it makes it really hard to focus on what you're supposed to be doing, because you're also thinking, is this the kick that's going to get me cut? Like, is this the one where you finally lose it? And again, getting back to the whole, how to be a good coach, like, if you're putting that pressure on your players, that's unnecessary pressure that's making them perform worse and not doing your job as a coach. Like, that you'll never hear Belichick say something like that. And as much as I hate Bill Belichick, mainly for his flip, but he is an amazing coach. Like, he is so good at identifying what his players can and can't do, and then putting them in a position to succeed. He highlights their positives and he tries to hide their negatives, and that's what a coach should be doing. And he loves special teams. Like, he absolutely understands that this is a very important phase of the game. Like, he will geek out about special team stuff, and you look at it and it's like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Like, they keep winning because the coach cares about all facets of the game.
Yeah.
Like, it's all important to him.
Yeah, you get the sense from Zimmer that when a kick is made, he assumes it should be made, and then when it isn't, he's super pissed. So it's kind of a lose-lose.
Do you think that's
right? Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh no, I was going to say it's like the parent who's like, oh, you made a 58-yard field goal in Chicago and swirling wind. Well, that's what you're supposed to do. Go do it next time.
Yep.
It's like, that was a really hard kick.
Do you think that attitude includes someone like Dan Bailey from coming back or looking for greener pastures? I mean, is that the kind of thing that might say, well, that was fun, not much fun, I got to go. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, it definitely is something where you're like, if I'm not having a good time in this environment, like, if I don't feel like I'm being respected for my abilities in this environment, and you can perform better and get paid just the same or more in another environment, why would you ever stick around?
Yeah.
Like, that'd be something where I'd be on the phone to my agent in an instant and like, all right, we're going to finish out this season, but let's put out some feelers for other teams and explore some options, because this is not going to be sustainable long term.
4 kickers in 5 years for Zimmer, and just about as many punters. I mean, since you and Longwell were let go, it's been a bit of a cluster. I'm not going to throw it all on Zimmer, but I think there's some of it's got to lay at his feet, and it's something that's probably got to change a little bit, because it's still a big part of the game, kicking.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's seemingly more important now than it's been.
Yeah, no, well, and especially due to the fact that since they've changed the kickoff rules, and I guess now they're talking about changing the punting rules, like, you have more opportunities now to score than you did before, and a lot of times those scoring opportunities aren't necessarily going to be touchdowns. They're going to be field goals. And those points, like, really start adding up really quick. Like, anytime we missed a field goal, we felt terrible about it, because we knew, okay, even if we missed an extra point, you feel terrible about it, because okay, coming down to the end of the game, now all of a sudden, instead of the team being up by 4, now you're only up by 3. And the other team can kick the field goal to tie it. Or you're only up by 2, the other team can kick the field goal to win it. So, yeah, every point matters.
Do you ever feel, I don't want to say resentment, but just kind of frustration from the offense and the defense when you guys they go out there and butt heads for how long, and then all of a sudden the kickers trot out there and they miss a field goal and they trot back off? Do you think there's a frustration that boils up in the locker room because of something like that?
It really depends on the situation. So if it's just kind of like a random kick, like if you've been doing well all the way up to that point in the season and then you just miss a kick, like that's fine. That happens. You know, everyone makes mistakes. Like they'll tell you, okay, we need that next time. You shrug it off. Like we're gonna need those points. But if you've made a consistent habit of missing kicks, then yeah, it's just like the same resentment that boils up between like an offense and a defense, where the offense is consistently going 3 and out, right? Or the defense that can't get off the field. Like there's the expectation that everyone's going to do their job, and that sometimes you'll fail at doing that job. Like sometimes you won't do it exactly right, but for the most part you're going to do it well. And if one side is doing that job and the other side isn't, then yeah, that's kind of where those frustrations start coming into play.
Go ahead, Joe.
I was gonna say, last question. I know that you're a big analytics guy in regards to the punting game. I think you wrote the algorithm that one of the national sites was using, Pro Football Focus, I believe, unless I'm saying things I shouldn't. Yep. And if you take a quick glance at your Wikipedia page or just delve even further into the biggest articles that Purple PTSD has ever had are punting related and the analytics behind it.
You're just saying that for your buddy Chris. Come on.
I am completely biased. How do you feel about your legacy here? I see that more often than not you're ranked as the best punter the team's had. And how does that kind of juxtapose with how things ended? It's just that's my question.
Yeah, well, I mean,
exasperated
life happens. I guess kind of the answer to that. Like, yeah, I wish I could have played longer. Like, I wish I could have made my records more unassailable, because I think someone will definitely break them at some point. But it's one of those things where just like the Saints, you need to learn. You can't go back and change the past. You have to deal with what's in front of you right now. And for me, I like playing football. I'm a very competitive person. I've always liked playing sports, but it's never been this overwhelming, like, I have to do this or my life is barren. It's more, I like doing this. This is a lot of fun. I enjoy being good at it. But once I'm done doing it, there's plenty of other things that I can do. And I think that's very important for everyone in all aspects of their lives, is that you have to have a healthy balance between the things that you enjoy doing. You can't just build your life around any one thing, because if that one thing disappears, well, then now who are you? And if that happens late on in your life, it becomes very hard to figure out, okay, well, who am I now? Because you spent so much time building yourself around that one specific thing. So, yeah, I wish I could have played longer for the Vikings, but at the same time, if wishes were fishes, beggars would cast nets or something, I think is how the saying goes.
Close enough. As always, man, thank you for coming on the show. You are awesome to talk to. Your insight is amazing. It's very much appreciated. I don't think anyone can say that you're not a straight shooter, which I think is important. Again, man, it's always great talking to you, and it's very much appreciated. And if you ever want to get back into the written word, let us know, because we would love to work with you.
Oh my goodness, more stories on punters.
yeah, right. Everyone wants more stories on punters, and I'm absolutely confident that this conversation that we've had will settle a 3-month Reddit debate. Anyone who's in a 3-month Reddit debate is not invested at all in this debate.
It's probably the most selfish interview of all time. But I'll take it.
So please update.
I'll let you know how it goes.
In the meantime, folks, go out and check out Chris's game. Twilight
of the Gods.
Thank you, Twilight of the Gods. And it's you guys are always expanding and putting new stuff on there, and it's worth checking out and getting involved and seeing if you like it. So maybe I have to do that myself. Thanks so much for coming on.
No, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, take it easy.
Okay, later,
man.
Yep.
What a great interview! Like I said, he's such a straight shooter, and his insight just in everything is really cool. So it's always fun to have him on. I kind of felt bad at bringing up the writing thing, because I've been kind of bothering him about that for a while.
He might get bored and want to do it. But,
yeah, he used to write for Deadspin, actually, so I figured at least a lateral move.
Yes, right. Spin PTSD, what's the difference,
we have less forced profanity, but that's about it. Yeah, there's just a couple quick technical notes I wanted to share with people. Like we mentioned last week, we've completely started from scratch in regards to our distribution of our shows. So before, if you subscribe to Morning Joes on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or Google Play, or any subsidiary therein, you would get every show that we do, which is almost 10 shows. And obviously that wasn't a sustainable thing. That was taking up too much room on people's devices. It was something that literally kept me up at night. And so moving forward, if you subscribe to this show or any show on Purple Territory Radio, you will only receive that show. We still have the main account if you want all those shows. Just look up Purple Territory Radio. But yeah, definitely resubscribe on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and you'll get these shows every single week. On top of that, I am very close to finishing, thank God, the Purple Territory Radio website. So I've been working on that for about a week, and it's been driving me crazy. But it will be finished hopefully by the time we record next week, so for the Super Bowl. So that will be amazing, because we're going to have all of our different shows on there. You'll be able to easily find which ones you want to maybe preview, subscribe to, so on and so forth. And so we're super excited to be able to launch that before the Super Bowl or around the Super Bowl. And it's just a testament to all the support that we've received from everybody. And since I brought up support, I would also highly recommend that you check out our Patreon if you like what we're doing and appreciate the fact that we don't have a paywall, which is something we'll never do one way or the other. But if you support even or send over even $5-10 a month for all the content that we produce, it goes a long way in regards to helping us continue to do this on a full-time basis and elevate our stuff to the next level, open up a recording studio, that sort of thing, since that's our goal for 2019. But yeah, this has been Morning Joes. Thanks for all your awesome questions, Mr. Oberly.
Oh, you're welcome. It's fun talking to him. I love talking to him. He's, like you said, he's a straight shooter. He's not gonna varnish it. He's gonna give you the straight story, and he's got a heck of a lot of insight about the game and about what goes on in that locker room. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's super cool. So I hope everyone enjoyed it like we did, and we will be back next week for the Super Bowl. Thanks for listening, and Skol.